Hello, everyone, and welcome to the inaugural edition of French Cinémathèque, a collaboration between the Federation of Alliance Françaises USA and Telescope Film. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Justine Barda, and I'm the founder and CEO of TelescopeFilm.com, a website for international film and TV. We offer a database of over 500,000 international films and series with links to where to watch them in the US. We also have a dedicated page on the site for French film and TV, with information about what's new and what's popular from France, as well as curated selections. We are delighted to be collaborating with AFUSA, the largest Alliance Française network in the world, helping 25,000 learners of French each year learn French, live French, and love French. You can find links to more information about both AFUSA and Telescope Film in the chat. So this is the first French Cinémathèque, but the event will happen on the fourth Monday of every month. I'd like to take a moment to tell you about the next couple films coming up. On February 26th, join us for a discussion of The Night of the 12th, a terrific thriller and social drama from Dominic Moll, whom you might remember from his film Only the Animals in 2019. Then on March 25th, in recognition of both the Mois de la Francophonie and also International Women's Day on March 8th, we'll be talking about Saint-Omer, directed by Alice Diop and France's submission to the 2023 Academy Awards. Before we get started, I'll just mention a couple of brief housekeeping notes. Please keep yourself muted when you're not speaking and stay on speaker view. To ask a question, please raise your hand using the Zoom feature at the bottom of your screen in the reaction section, or put your question in the chat. If there are technical issues, you may want to leave the Zoom, then sign back in after a couple minutes using the original Zoom link. This event is being recorded for our YouTube channels, and the total runtime is 1 hour. And with that, I'd like to introduce my co-host, Renee Ketchum, coordinator of the One Film, One Federation program, and our facilitator, Aude Hesbert, director of the Villa Albertine in Los Angeles and French film industry veteran. Over to you, Aude.
Hello, everybody. C'est parti. I am thrilled to meet you all today for the launch of this new French rendezvous. Thank you very much, Renée. Thank you very much, Justine, for having me on board to facilitate this discussion today. And before starting, I would love to share some quick background information about the film and the director. Rebecca Zlotowski is no longer a beginner, as you might all know. Other People's Children is her fifth feature, and all her previous films were very ambitious artistically, acclaimed and acknowledged by film critics and screened all around the world in the festival circuit. This film is a little different, very low profile, a simple slice of life, I would say, a film that is more personal and intimate. It was shot during pandemic and premiered in competition in Venice. It started as an adaptation of Romain Gary's novel, Your Ticket is No Longer Valid, in which the actor, Roche Dizem, was set to play a former activist confronted to male impotency. For those who have seen the film, and I hope you many of them today, it's interesting to see how Rebecca Zlotowski twisted the story to make it personal and espouse a female point of view. The magic thing about this film, and I feel allowed to tell you this today since the director herself had spread the news, is that she got pregnant during the shooting. Needless to say how fascinating this coincidence is for a film about maternity. But just a few words about the cast before opening up the discussion. Roche Dizem, the actor, is an established French actor of Moroccan descent. He starred in more than 50 films, including Rebecca Zlotowski's TV series Savages, where he played the part of the first Maghrebi person to win election as president of France. He also directed his own films, showing an extensive and eclectic range of talents. For a long time, Virginie Efira, the main actress of the film, was referred to the Belgian TV host turned actress with a slight contempt for her not very artistic background. But in only a few years, she managed to position herself as the most admired, loved, and acclaimed actress of French independent cinema. It's almost impossible to miss her today when you watch a French film. You might have seen her in Justine Trier's films In Bed with Victoria and Sibylle, or in Benedetta by Paul Verhoeven, in which she stands out for daring physical performances. But enough, I have spoken more than enough, I think, and I'd like to open up the discussion with you, and it's your turn to talk now. So to start with, I just said that this film was about maternity, but I'm sure for me, there's so much more to it, and I'd like to hear your thoughts about what you think this film is really about. So anyone wants to start and comment on the topic of the film? I don't see anyone, so in the loop.
So I'll just mention as a reminder, you can either put your questions in the chat or you can raise your hand using the raise hand feature on Zoom at the bottom of your screen in the reactions section, whatever works for you.
I don't see, is there a way I can see the participants? No, is there anyone wants to talk about it? Or if you're shy, you can send a question in the chat.
I'll go ahead and
Great.
say my point of view. I want to start by saying thank you for putting this together. My name is Aurelia, and I think for the first half of the film, I witnessed the main character. The best that I can describe it is betraying herself. Like she kept quiet on her needs in order to keep the peace over and over. Like she never said, you know, why don't we do it my way? Or I really feel this way about this, or it just seemed like every which way, everybody from students, teachers, her boyfriend, even the child, it was everybody's way but hers. And I really wanted to see at the end of the film her reconcile that or come to terms with it, which I didn't, and then realized that the film wasn't about that. It wasn't about coming necessarily to a full circle. It was more about, I think I came to terms when I saw the epilogue that it wasn't about necessarily the child, but that we're all everybody's children. And then at some points we all mother in some way or another. And so it's kind of, I felt like, oh, this film is more about our experience here on Earth and not necessarily about solving a problem or resolving a conflict. It's just about ordinary lives, living ordinary days, and just basically trying to do the best of what we have. So it was very surprising in that way, especially very different from American film, where you always solve the conflict or you come to fruition to whatever that is. And having seen several non-US films, I was like, oh, they're very different, even in the nudity. But it's like, no, it's not about solving the issue. It's just about letting you through a little window of somebody's life. And so that's what I took away from it.
Yeah, you've got a very interesting point. Indeed, it's very different from an American film and undramatic in a way. So, but would you say that I like the way you said it's more about parenting really and transmission and passing on values and families and really about motherhood. And maybe to dive a little more into it, how many children do you think this woman have? Anyone would like to comment on that question? Because she's a stepmother, of course, but I think she has a lot of children to, to take care of in this film. Oh, another question. Do you have the feeling that there are many stepmothers in the history of film? No. So we often say that all the stories have been told, but they haven't, since it's probably one of the first time that we have a central character being a stepmother in a film. What do you think?
Usually, the stepmothers in films are vilified. They are the bad guys. But
Exactly.
but in this film, it is not. The director and the filmmaker didn't go this way. In fact, the main character of the film is the stepmother, and she's a stepmother not only for Layla, the little girl, but for her her teenage students, and for her sister's baby, and perhaps even to her younger sister, because they lost their mother when the older girl was only 9. So she was a mother figure for her younger sister and taking care of her as her child.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
I think that the film makes you think that, I mean, biologically, many people can be mothers, but they are not really mothers. And it's an alternate lifestyle. I mean, after meeting her student who becomes a head waiter, satisfied with his life, he was a problem student, more or less. And the expression on her face when she left the restaurant, it's as though she found another meaning in life. The fact that the group chooses one way, becoming biological mothers. And she said it in part of the film, I'm not part of all that. But she realizes that there is a lot more meaning to life than she originally thought when she was thinking from within the box. Now she's out of the box. And the expression on her face is one of discovery and satisfaction at the very end.
Yes, and the interesting thing about being a stepmother is when you break up with the father, what happens with the kid? Anyone would like to comment on this and the way it is conveyed in the film? Oh, I see an interesting comment in the chat from Anthony. I was happy to see that Virginie Efira was roughly 40 years old. She had wrinkles and was a good match for the role. Interesting. I would like to hear your thought about the way this character is presented as a woman, as a lover. What would you say?
I think this is Tony. I think that she was presented as a real person, and I appreciated that. So often in film, women in their 40s look perfect, so to speak, and it's hard to believe that they're really in the role. You know, in this film, Virginie Efira clearly was a good match for the role. You know, her facial expressions, her body language, all really matched what she was trying to do with her boyfriend. I forget his name, as well as his child.
Ali. His name is Ali.
Ali, of course.
This is Carol in Honolulu. And you talk about the character as a stepmother, and really she was not a stepmother. She was the girlfriend of the father. They never married. So as the girlfriend of the father, when they break up, she really has no legal connection to that child. I mean, she has an emotional connection, of course, but had they been married, had she actually been the stepmother, then she would have had a legal connection to that child, you know, to be able to have a relationship with that child if they had had a divorce. And that would be worked out in court as to how, you know, what her relationship with the child would be.
Yeah, that's a very interesting comment, but that's how the film is realistic in a way, because there are so many situations where women are entangled in that kind of relationships and create bonds with the kid, and then the story is a love story, of course, but it's also a story of a breaking up with a kid that she was fond of. So this is a good point.
To second that, I noticed that she always leaned in from the very beginning into that relationship and was very inquisitive about everything about his life. And the boyfriend never, or at least it wasn't portrayed like that at all in the film. So early on, I was like, oh, this is not going to work out, because she's like 80% in, he's like maybe 40. He wasn't portrayed as wanting to learn about her friends. It was just basically all him. And I was like, this is not going to end well. I could tell from that. And you could tell also there was going to be a tragedy because, again, she lived in like almost 100% even with the child. And he was just welcoming, of course, because it benefited him. But I would have liked to see more of that equal relationship, which it wasn't really, I guess the story wasn't that way, but I was like, oh, this is not going to end well, unfortunately.
Yeah,
Hi, this is Renee. Do you think that was also cultural? I mean, it was very clear from the beginning that they were both from very, very different cultures. I mean, in the first 15 minutes, the child, she's just talking about the name of the dog, which I can't remember the name. It was an Arabic name. And so obviously it seemed to me that we were dealing with a family that was Arabic. There were some cultural things there, as well as her being from a very, very tight Jewish family. So his character, I found him to be very predictable based on his potential cultural references early in the movie. I don't know if anybody else noticed that.
At the same way, Renee, he's a very modern father, no? What you think? Because he is taking care of his kids like every other week. He's working. Not a lot of fathers are like basing. He makes his choice at the end of the film based on the on his daughter, on the priority of his daughter, like making up with the mothers, the Leila's mother, just for the good of his kid. So that's not that often that you see that in Arabic families. So he's also presented as a very modern father. But I agree with you. I mean, the thing is, the father figure is definitely weaker than the mother figures. What do you think?
Also culturally, she left him in the beginning. So, there's that defeatist feeling that he's experienced from the beginning. But again, I found him an overpowering character in a person in the relationship.
I see Martin wants to speak. Martin, you need to unmute yourself.
The mute control is in the bottom left.
Yes, I think we talked about the emotional bonds, and those are really both ways between the daughter Leila and the stepmother, and Leila is very sad when what's her name, the woman tells. What's her name?
Rachel.
Rachel. Tells her, talks to her. Then she recovers quickly. She has a life, and she doesn't seem to be affected for a very long time, but we don't know. But I think Rachel also is a mother figure for many other people in the movie, like her younger colleague, the student who meets with her at the end at the cafe, for even Ali. So she has a lot, and her sister's new child. I mean, she's not a mother, but she has a lot of the qualities of a mother.
Yeah. I think that's a good point, and that's clearly what the director tries to point out, is that you can be a mother and you can bring love and bring values to somebody who's not a biological kid.
I found it interesting that the biological mother doesn't seem to be too interested in the husband, the former husband, but she is interested in the child. But once Rachel is on the scene and Rachel seems to be staying, then the biological mother becomes more interested. And eventually the biological mother says to the father that she wants to get back together again. And it made me wonder if Rachel was never in the picture, if the biological mother would actually have made that decision. I think she felt a little competition there, some competition for Layla's love, and she was reacting to that.
Very interesting, because I hadn't noticed that. And for me, the film was more about debunking stereotypes about the stepmother. As someone said at the very beginning of the discussion, usually in fairy tales, the stepmother is just awful. She's very jealous of the other woman. She's competitive. And here, remember, at the end of the film, they both agree that they should not apologize, and that only the men should apologize, you know, for the situation. So I think there's kind of a sisterhood in the film between the women as well. But I got your point, and I hadn't noticed it. So very interesting. So it's quite ambivalent, maybe. Not that easy that I thought it would be. And Anne is raising her hand. Anne, would you like to come in and jump into the conversation?
Yes. So a couple of comments. Somebody a few moments ago said something about how Rachel was more invested in the relationship than Ali was. And I agree with that. It was interesting to me, that scene where the little girl drew the picture and gave it to Rachel. And it was a picture of the dad, the little girl, Rachel, and her mother. And then Ali's comment was something about my ladies. You know, he had a very different view on what relationship is all about. It was almost like he was, collecting these relationships in his life. And then the other thing too, in addition to the theme about motherhood and what it means and the different ways that was manifested in the film, I saw a very strong theme of isolation as well. I mean, Rachel was isolated from many angles in different parts of the film, different relationships and different settings. And there was even that scene when they were having a discussion with the other teachers, and she was isolated in her opinion about what to do with that one particular student, and how she stood up for her opinion there. But she had a hard time standing up for her wishes and her needs within that relationship with Ali. So she was fighting some isolation, I think, too.
Maria?
Yes, I just want to say that the film, the part of the film that stuck out a lot to me was her need. I think she had a deep need to she did want to have a child. She was surrounded by children at the school. She had this opportunity with Layla, and at the beginning it was very difficult because Layla was a bit hurtful and was, why do you always have to be here? And that's tough to just deal with those sort of things. And going to pick her up from judo and seeing other mothers waiting with snacks and comparing herself and how she was just, I don't think I never thought of her as a stepmom. She was stepping in as a mom, but she wasn't a stepmom. That only comes with marriage. But I thought it was really interesting when she went to see the doctor a couple of times. Apparently he's some famous documentarian who I did not know, but I read a review. I thought it was incredible that he was so old and that he would be a gynecologist or fertility doctor. But I thought those moments, I think there's a lot of women, one of my daughters is kind of in that age, not quite as old as that, but where they start thinking, am I going to be able to have a child? And all of her friends who aren't married are starting to think like that. And it's a very deep and important issue, and I think she had a lot. She had her sister, and imagine how you would feel if you were trying to if you wanted to have a child, but then your younger sister tells you she's pregnant and she didn't even try. Those are all very. I think there was a lot of emotion, and I thought that she didn't show how devastating that could have been. Instead, she cries, but there's supposedly tears of happiness for her sister. I thought that she was kind of, I think deep down you assume that she's hurt by all this. And that's what I got out of the film, just the different things that she had to deal with, seeing other women being mothers, almost being a mother with Layla, and then seeing her sister be a mother. So that's about it right now.
That's very interesting, Maria. And I think we can start talking about the way the film is made and about the direction, the actor's direction, because as you noticed, her emotions are very inner, and she doesn't show off in her way of acting and the way the director wanted it to appear. So that's probably a start to talk about the technique of the film and the art of making films. But before that, I see that Helen wants to jump in.
Well, I just wanted to comment that I think the theme is really more about fertility and the thing about the passage of time for many women in society, or perhaps career oriented, that many people deal with this issue of fertility. And it was interesting for me because at the beginning, the first half, or certainly the very beginning, moved very quickly into this very French feeling romance, where I felt like maybe this is just going to be sort of trivial. And also my brain was going to, is it a rom-com? Because always when a woman is dealing with this problem, or the stepmother, it just becomes a joke in the United States anyway. You know, we don't really deal with these issues because they're very uncomfortable. And so I appreciated that because it is a very serious issue. And I thought also what was different from past cinema is that the woman who Virginie plays, she is not tragic. To me, she's a heroine, and it ends on a very upbeat note because it's a free woman in the city in Paris, and the world is open to her. So I know she had her ups and downs and she had sad moments, but you certainly don't feel, you know, she's going to be tossed aside like Glenn Close.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think this woman is not waiting for a man to fulfill her life.
That's right.
So it takes life as it comes. And she has a job that is she likes. She has friends. She has a close family. She doesn't expect anything specifically from life, and she starts to realizing that she wants a kid, but only because she falls in love.
Yeah.
And since you were talking about it, did anyone recognize the director behind the gynecologist?
Oh,
No.
documentary, Frederick Wiseman,
Yeah.
documentarian.
Don't you find it funny that his name is Wiseman?
I know, but I agree, he looked way too old.
Martin?
Yes, I am. Yeah, I very like the last comments about the gynecologist. A wise man, a wise woman. It's very interesting. I didn't notice that, but it's good. Somebody mentioned that they had a daughter. Somebody mentioned that she had a daughter that age, and I do too. And she just was pregnant and had a baby last summer. I had my child meet my children very late in life, and this movie really, the reason I wanted to see that movie is because my son is kind of in a relationship with a mother of two children, and he didn't want. He had said before that he didn't want to have children, and now he's not taking a father role in that relationship, but she has two children, so something will have to happen. And for me, it's it's a difficult situation, I think. I'm curious to what is going to happen to him. So the movie was interesting to me for that reason. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Martine.
Mhm.
That's something we haven't talked about, and it's another uncomfortable subject. It's the question of abortion. Do anyone wants to tell us how you felt about the way it was tackled in the film? Because it's both about having kids and not having kids. And there's a very interesting monologue of the main character about abortion. You remember?
Yeah, I think.
Well, there was a whole discussion about rabbinical views on abortion and
Yeah.
how it's not all on one side or the other, but it's one of these questions that we have to deal with from personal belief and personal, feelings about, the importance of the mother's ability to choose, or the importance of, preserving fetal life. And it's not a question that's going to be so easily decided one way or the other.
Exactly, and there are two scenes where we can see that it's not an easy question. There's the one with the stones. Should we put 1 or 2 stones on the tomb? And the other one is when she said that she had an abortion. She confesses she had an abortion and said that she might have taken another decision if her mother hadn't died. Yes, I see someone. I can't see your name, but I see a hand here with a couple.
Not
So
just sure.
I'm Beth,
Hello,
and
Beth.
yeah, and actually I'm a retired gynecologist. There were a lot of aspects of this film that resonated with me. I think I just want to comment. I thought she was just so strong. I want to go back. I'm going to say something about abortion in a minute, but I also wanted to comment that I really appreciated her honesty with the child. You remember Ali did not, the mother, Lila's mother did not want to tell her the truth about the death of her friend's mother. And she felt, because of her own experience with her own mother, that she wanted to be honest with the child. Likewise, when the relationship ended, she was very sweet, caring, but very honest with the child. And I really appreciated that perspective. Finally, about abortion, I think the father, who I think is her father in real life.
Yeah, it
Did
is.
I? Okay, well, yeah. The father is the one who explains, I believe, the Jewish perspective that life does not begin at fertilization, life begins after the birth of the child. And so I think that was where they were going with that.
Exactly. But at the same time, he said, because she's making fun of it, of course, because it's Jewish humor. I don't know. We can notice that probably it's the only religion that would agree with abortion, but at the same time, the father says that that's not true. It's a very Jewish answer, it's both true and untrue. So it tells a lot about the difficulty of this issue, of course, life. And it leads us to another question. There are lots of scenes in the film where death is linked to life. It's interesting because it's a film about giving birth, but it's also a film where death is at every corner. Did anyone notice that?
The car accident.
The car accident?
And the accident on the road when she was getting out for Layla. That was scary.
Yeah. And there's another thing that death is really connected to the lack of mothers, because there's an important thing in the film, and it is all about giving birth and being a mother, is not having had a mother. And there are 2 mothers that are that are dead in the film.
Mhm.
A mother at the judo session that is dying little by little and that she sees in front of her, and her own mother that is dead. So parenting is much connected to life and death in the film. Yeah, I see Roger wants to talk. No, I see a hand. No.
Yes, I have a question though. I listened to the French to try and learn French. Was that gynecologist an American speaking in French? Was he speaking with an American accent?
A little bit, but he speaks very good French. Frederick Reisman is an amazing director, documentary filmmaker, and he documented both American and French institutions. And he is the king of cinéma vérité, with very long and very rich films about how our institutions work. So it's very funny that she chose him to play this part. And of course, it's a touch of humor on her side. Definitely. But I recommend you to watch his films. There's one about the opera, one about the British Museum. There's one about the social services in the States. And recently, it's still in theaters. You have Les Trois Gros, about a French famous cook. And it's a 3-hour-long film where the director is in the kitchen all the time with the cooks. Another question I'd like to ask you, it's the representation of the body and the sex scenes. Can we remember the first, when they first fall in love and how quick the sex scenes is coming? How did you perceive this representation of sex in the film? And about desire? Yeah, Aurelia?
Yes. I was, having watched international films, I immediately kind of was shocked compared to US film. And then I was like, oh, of course I'm watching international film. And how free she is with movement in her body and how non-stereotypical her body was, and yet she came across so confident. And also, I think was actually more shocked at the zoom in of the condom and how I was like, oh, we don't do that in US film at all. And how I was like, we should be doing that in US film, and not only that, but then when there was a lack of condom, how there was that conversation of how we're going to handle this. Like, I was like, oh, you never see this in US TV or film. And it just continued that, oh, like in Europe, they're so much more open about this. Like in the US, like we have that sense of exhibitionism at some points, but yet so not being able to have that conversation when it comes to sex and the conversations that you have with your partner regarding that, and how just easy it was. And it wasn't like this, how would I say, like difficult conversation. It was just, we're going to have a conversation about this and come to a solution about it, and not like the biggest thing we could talk about. And was reminded, have not seen international films. I was like, oh yeah, this is how they treat this topic in other countries, and it should be. It immediately was like, oh, this is how we should be doing it. That was how I saw that.
Yeah, you're right. There's lightness in the sense of shooting the scene, especially with the balcony scene when she's naked and it's they're all having fun with it and no shame. But there's another point I'd like to see is the way the male body is filmed. Do you remember the shower scene?
He was also, not only was her beauty was shown, but also his beauty, I felt. It was like a Greek god in some way. That's what I remember. I was like, oh, like we're appreciating his body and not seeing it as a nude scene or shock. It's like we're appreciating both of their bodies and kind of like entrenches us into what their love story is going to be. It was quite beautiful, I thought.
Yeah, and everybody's talking right now about what we call the female gaze. I guess you all heard about it, but would you say that this film would reverse the gaze and proposing and offering a female gaze on a male body in that scene? From my point of view, I think Rebecca Zlotowski is trying to reverse something in the way we are used and accustomed to watching bodies. The pictorial tradition of painters in all the classic history is that men are painting women naked. And in a way, I think it's really something that she wants to show us, is that women can also paint male bodies.
I think that's such an interesting point, and it makes me reflect on my experience of first seeing the film when I found their connection so compelling. And I wonder if that might be why, because it is being, to some extent, told from a female perspective. I remember thinking that I couldn't remember seeing a recent representation of people dating and finding it so plausible and delightful.
Thank you, Justine. Yeah, and there's lots of sensuality and grace in the way this love story is unfolding at the very beginning, which drives me to the way the film is shot. How would you describe the movements of camera? Somebody has been talking about the way she felt it was like a rom-com. What do you think the influences of this film is, and what kind of genre do you think this film is?
Could we go back for a moment to the scenes involving lovemaking?
Yeah, sure, Anthony.
It was something very subtle that wouldn't exist in American film. They made love without a condom, and then she became seemingly pregnant, but then the I don't know what the terminology is, the baby self-aborted when she was taking a shower. And there was no discussion of this, nobody talked about it, and I thought it was very elegantly done.
Yeah, you're right. I think it's in this scene, but everything is very elegant in the way things are told. The film tackles really difficult and uncomfortable subjects with a very lots of delicacies. And when you can you just tell me how you resent the pace of the film, for instance, the edit which relates to the editing of the film? There's something very specific in the pace of the film. Think about the rain, the way she's running all the time. I would say that this film, the editing and the pace of the film is very fluid, which relates also to a kind of femininity, you know. There's no much talking in the film, except like 1 or 2 long monologues when she talks about her inner feelings about abortion. But most of the time, everything is told with the specific grammar of cinema, with the music, with the glances of the actors, with the way one scene is connecting to the other. Yes, Alice.
Well, one of the things I was in Paris the few times I've been there, because I like Southern France more, but everybody's in a hurry. You know, they're all, and look at the mothers who are giving the kids the little lunches, and then they went, so they had this schedule, and I'm guilty of it too, back in the 70s. They have their music, then they have their gymnastics, and then they have their swim class, and so she's running through the rain, but running to work and running, is that rush. Whereas in Bordeaux or Villefranche-sur-Mer, everyone sort of, I remember when I was in college, when I was in Paris, I asked someone directions, and they were like, just brushed me off. And then in Bordeaux or Lyon or Chamonix, they take their time and they show you where the place is. So just that contrast is, I'm a Chicagoan, even though now I live in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. But in Chicago, we didn't rush like the New Yorkers. They were always in a hurry, always in, I'm sorry, the people that live in New York. That's how it appeared. But also to people who came from smaller towns, Chicago appeared that way. And so I just thought that was showing such just a typical, whether she was the belle-mère or not, just the typical mother role of all the demands to make sure your child was going to be well-rounded. That's all.
I like your comment, Alice. This is so true. I like you noticed it. Renee, you have your hand risen.
Hi, yeah, in terms of the timing and the rushing, I mean, I agree what was just said, but it also, I think, was very reflective of the fact that there wasn't enough time and she was running out of time. So from the very beginning, she has months. So that whole sort of stylized way that I think the editing is done, an episodic way of having it done, the rush because there isn't time. And the other thing that I thought was really interesting in terms of the editing, I was very fascinated with the score, because the score was, again, also sort of episodic, as they circle in, I forget that term, where they're sort of
Iris, the iris.
The iris, yeah. The music in this film went from classical to that song about cocaine. And it's like, why? In other words, and then of course the wonderful ending it's so hopeful. But the music was obviously very specific to each, and I'm using the word episode probably incorrectly, but defined the frames of the film, I think.
Yeah, you're totally right. And when I hear you, I understand that you feel that this film is so typically French, but at the same time, it's also a tribute to American cinema. I mean, the first shot of the film, where the camera is like flying, getting inside with the jazz music, like a musical of the 50s, like a film of Woody Allen. What did you think? Did this film make you think of other films? Or do you think it's only typical French? Anthony, is that you? You have your hand up?
Oh, no, it's from a previous moment. I'll turn it off.
Okay.
This is kind of a little off the topic, but there was a comment in here about the male nudity and how the female body is often completely shown and the male body does not show the male genitals. And I think that's typical of American films. You see everything from the female, but you don't see everything from the male. And in other discussions I've had in other groups, people have said, well, that's because the directors are male and they're wanting to show the full female body, but they're not particularly interested in showing the full male body. And I thought maybe that was just an American thing, but here it is in a French film. They also don't show the full male body. They only show the upper portion of the male body. And then he turns when he's in the shower. So as the camera goes down, you don't see the male genitals. Interesting. So I wonder if that's saying also that the French directors are similar to the American directors in being more male and having that male gaze,
Oh, you're totally right. I mean, we have 1,000 of years of patriarchy behind us, so things change little by little. It's only just new that we can see a male naked in a film. That's just a first step, but as you noticed, it's not totally. We're not totally equal on that on that subject. So
I I have a question for you. So I know that in the US, this has something to do with ratings, that believe it or not, the film ratings distinguish between male nudity and female nudity. And so many directors avoid male nudity because it will mean, you know, an NC-17 or an R rating. And I am wondering if that is the same in France. Do you happen to know?
I'm not sure about it, but I would be very surprised if so, because otherwise we should definitely raise a protest against it.
Amen to that.
No, I don't think so, but that's a very interesting point. And it would say a lot about the fight we still have to to lead in terms of equality. And yeah, representation is the basis of our mindset. So it's so important. GS.
Yes. Hi. Yeah. Sorry, I'm not on camera, but I had a question around, I just noticed that, you know, they made a point that she was Jewish and he was Arabic, but they never discussed this. So it was kind of just seen, but it was like there was this tension that as an audience member, as a Jewish audience member, I felt, but it wasn't discussed at all. And I thought that was an interesting choice. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I had the same feeling because it's such an interesting subject that the guy is Arabic and she's Jewish. But I think it makes sense. It's pretty coherent with the way Rebecca Zlotowski is designing her film. Every important subject, every difficult subject is kept really innerly and is not really talked with words. So everything is about mise en scène and about the way the actors are playing, but also my guess is that she doesn't want to make a subject out of it. For her, she wants to have a couple that is a regular couple and where having a different culture is not an issue. She wants to portray like a modern couple, and she doesn't want to make it into a possible conflict. It's just something that happens. They're a couple, they come from different backgrounds, and she really, the thing that the fact that they don't talk about it, I think, is really, really important. And it really says that she doesn't want to present it as a problem. But that's my opinion. What about you, Phyllis?
Well, this is something different. I was drawn into the director's use of the close-up, and especially that one scene I found very poignant towards the end of the movie, where Rachel is in the park with her sister's baby, and then she sees Ali, who is there with Leila, whatever.
Leila.
And I mean, she really lingers on both of their faces and back and forth, and they close their eyes. And I just found myself really thinking, okay, so what are all the thoughts that are behind those facial expressions?
Yeah, this is very graceful. And I think there's a motive, like, you know, every painter has a motive and every director also. And when I was talking about those iris shots, you know, that are very elegantly finishing some of the sequences of the film, and you have those eyes being closed. So there's something really, really elegant and really emotional that comes out of this form, you know, that is recurrent in the film, whether in the iris, whether in the closing of the eyes. So this is something that tells you a lot about the craft of a metteur en scène, of a director, and the way she uses the grammar of film and not only dialogue. That's why she's not a writer, she's not a musician, but she's a filmmaker, and she uses the specific tools of filmmaking to express feelings. And this is a really, really beautiful scene. Beyond words.
Ellen, did you have your hand up earlier? Oh, okay.
I think we have time for one more comment or question.
I
Before...
wondered about the director and how much we know about the director and other films that the director has made.
She has made 4 other films with the big stars like Natalie Portman or Léa Seydoux, and films that were very ambitious, very artistic, internationally acclaimed by film critics. And but this one is probably the most intimate and low-key film she did. Her previous films were Dear Prudence, Grand Central, Planetarium, and Uneasy Girl. But always female characters centric.
I'm putting a link to Rebecca Zlotowski's films in the chat in case you'd like to watch more of them.
And as I said, she also directed a TV series called Savages, where the actor Roche Dizem in the film who's playing Ali is also the guy who's going to be a president, the first France president in our series. From the first president from Arabic background in France. Of course, it's a fiction, unfortunately. Renee, you'd like to add something?
I just wanted to add that in my final takeaway from this film, which it sounds like we've all enjoyed and we've all taken different things from it, is that no matter what, all of our choices, good or bad or accidental or due to whatever, have consequences. And her choice of waiting to have children had consequences. Her choice of, I think the whole film deals with all kinds of different choices that ultimately have consequences that are either joyful or otherwise.
Thank you, Renee. You're right. And it's a film about responsibility and freedom, probably. From what So anyone wants to say a final word, or shall we hand it back to Justine to conclude this first sequence?
Any last thoughts? Alrighty then. Well, I just want to say thank you to Aude and to Renee and to everyone who joined us today and for exploring these interesting ideas with us. We really appreciate it. We hope to see you again next month. I'll just mention that next month's French Cinémathèque is going to take place like every month on the 4th Monday, which is February 26th, and the film is going to be The Night of the 12th. We'll be sending out more information about that to you shortly. And you can find The Night of the 12th on Telescope. And we look forward to seeing you in February. So
I just wanted to make a comment if I could. I thought the questioning was just wonderful. The way the moderator led us through some very different aspects of the film. I thought it was very well thought out.
Thank you, Carol. Hope to see you soon.
Thank you so much. That's great to hear. I just put a link to Night of the 12th in the chat in case anybody wants to watch it soon. And again, thanks everyone for coming, and we really look forward to seeing you next month.